Many people say they feel lost, but when you look at their lives from the outside, everything seems fine. They have work, routines, responsibilities, and sometimes even achievements they once dreamed about. And yet, inside, there is a quiet confusion, a sense that something is missing, but without a clear name.
Feeling lost doesn't always come from chaos. Sometimes it comes from stability that no longer feels meaningful.
That's a very important point. When people imagine feeling lost, they usually picture crisis, failure, or big problems. But often, feeling lost shows up when life becomes predictable, when days repeat themselves and you stop feeling curious about what comes next.
You're not lost because things are wrong. You're lost because things stopped feeling alive.
And that can be uncomfortable to admit, especially in a world that teaches us to be grateful all the time. People tell themselves, I shouldn't complain, I have no reason to feel this way, so they silence the feeling instead of listening to it. But emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They become quieter, heavier, and more confusing.
Yes, feeling lost is often misunderstood as ingratitude, when in reality it's a sign of growth. You've outgrown a version of life that once worked for you, and growth rarely feels clear at the beginning.
Another reason this feeling is so confusing is because it doesn't come with a clear direction. When you're unhappy with a job, you think, I need a new job. When a relationship ends, you know something has changed. But when you feel lost, there is no obvious next step. There's only uncertainty.
And uncertainty is uncomfortable. The mind prefers problems with solutions. Feeling lost is not a problem you solve, it's a phase you move through, and that requires a different approach.
Many people react to feeling lost by trying to immediately fix it. They change routines overnight. They set big goals. They consume motivational content. They pressure themselves to find purpose quickly. But urgency often makes the feeling worse.
Because urgency adds pressure, and pressure blocks reflection. When you rush clarity, you usually get noise instead. Feeling lost requires slowing down, not speeding up.
Slowing down doesn't mean doing nothing, it means paying attention. It means noticing what drains you and what quietly gives you energy, not excitement. Energy. Those are not the same.
Exactly. Excitement is loud and short-term. Energy is subtle and sustainable. When you feel lost, ask yourself, what activities leave me feeling a little more present afterward? That question gives better answers than, what should I be doing with my life?
Another reason people feel lost is because their identity is outdated. We build identities based on survival, expectations, or past needs, and those identities can carry us for years, but one day they stop fitting.
And when identity stops fitting, confusion begins. You might think, I don't recognize myself anymore, but the truth is, you're becoming someone new. The problem is that society doesn't teach us how to update identity gently.
Instead, we're taught to define ourselves quickly. What do you do? What's your plan? What's next? But when you feel lost, those questions feel heavy.
And sometimes the healthiest answer is, I'm still figuring that out. That answer requires confidence, not weakness.
Language matters a lot here, especially in English. Many learners want to express this feeling but don't have the words. Here are some natural ways native speakers talk about feeling lost. I feel disconnected from my routine. I don't feel aligned with my life right now. I feel unsure about what I want next. I feel like I'm in between phases.
Notice how these sentences are calm. They're not dramatic, they're honest. You don't need extreme words to express real emotions.
Another important point, feeling lost doesn't mean you need a big life change. Sometimes it means you need small internal shifts, more honesty, more rest, more space.
And sometimes it means grief. People don't talk enough about grieving versions of themselves. You can grieve a dream you no longer want. You can grieve a future you imagined. You can grieve who you thought you would become. That grief doesn't mean failure. It means acceptance.
Acceptance is often the turning point. Once you accept that you're in a transition, the pressure to fix yourself decreases, and curiosity can return.
Curiosity is the opposite of panic. When you're curious, you ask questions without demanding immediate answers. That's where clarity grows.
Let's talk about comparison again because it plays a strong role here. When you feel lost, seeing others who seem certain makes the feeling worse, but certainty is often a performance.
Yes, many people who look confident are simply committed to a path, not necessarily fulfilled by it. Commitment and clarity are not the same thing.
Feeling lost can actually be a sign that you refuse to commit to something that doesn't feel true anymore. That's integrity, not weakness.
But integrity is quiet. It doesn't get applause. That's why it feels lonely.
Loneliness is another layer of this experience. When you're in a transition, it's hard to relate to people who are settled. And that doesn't mean you don't love them anymore. It means you're changing.
And change always creates distance before it creates connection. This is temporary, even if it feels endless.
Another thing that helps is removing the idea that you must find yourself. You're not lost somewhere outside, you're just listening differently now.
You don't find yourself, you notice yourself through patterns, through reactions, through what feels heavy and what feels light.
That's why journaling, walking, or quiet reflection are powerful during this phase, not to analyze, but to observe.
And observation leads to understanding. Understanding leads to choice. Choice leads to movement.
Movement doesn't have to be visible. You can be changing deeply while your life looks the same.
And that's often the most important kind of change.
When people feel lost, they often search for answers outside themselves. They look for advice, formulas, or someone who can tell them what the right next step is. And while guidance can be helpful, feeling lost is not something another person can solve for you. It's something you need to understand from the inside.
The problem is that most people were never taught how to listen to themselves without judgment. So when uncertainty appears, they panic.
Yes, because uncertainty feels like danger to the brain. The mind wants clear plans, labels, and direction. When those disappear, it interprets the situation as a threat. That's why feeling lost often comes with anxiety, even when nothing bad is happening externally.
And anxiety pushes people toward distraction. Instead of asking, what is changing inside me? They ask, how can I stop feeling this? They want relief, not understanding.
But relief without understanding is temporary. You might feel better for a moment, but the confusion returns because the message wasn't heard. Feeling lost is often an invitation to realignment.
Realignment means adjusting your life so it matches who you are now, not who you were 5 or 10 years ago. And that can feel scary because it means questioning decisions that once made sense.
And questioning past decisions can feel like betraying your old self. But growth doesn't invalidate the past, it builds on it. Who you were helped you survive. Who you're becoming helps you live.
That's an important distinction. Survival focuses on security, approval, and stability. Living focuses on meaning, expression, and alignment. When survival mode lasts too long, life starts to feel empty.
And emptiness is often misinterpreted as laziness or lack of gratitude. But emptiness can be a signal that your inner world needs more space.
Let's talk about expectations. Many people feel lost because they're living inside expectations they never chose consciously. Family expectations, social expectations, cultural timelines. You absorb them slowly without realizing it.
And one day you wake up and ask yourself, whose life is this? That question can be shocking.
But it's also honest. Honesty disrupts comfort. When you admit that something no longer fits, you lose the illusion of certainty, but you gain truth.
Truth doesn't give immediate answers, but it gives direction. False certainty feels calm, but it keeps you stuck.
Another thing that keeps people lost is the belief that clarity should arrive suddenly, like an idea, a sign, or a moment of inspiration. But clarity is usually built slowly through experience.
Yes, clarity grows through movement, not waiting. Small experiments, small changes, small risks. Not to find the answer, but to collect information about yourself.
That's why action matters, even when you don't feel ready. Not big action, curious action. Trying something new for a short time. Saying no to something familiar. Allowing yourself to feel uncomfortable without escaping.
Uncomfortable emotions are often teachers. Boredom can teach you what no longer excites you. Frustration can show you where you feel powerless. Sadness can point to what you care about deeply.
If you avoid these emotions, you avoid their lessons. And without lessons, growth stops.
This is also where emotional vocabulary becomes powerful. Instead of saying, I feel bad, you can say, I feel disconnected, I feel restless, I feel unfulfilled, I feel emotionally tired. These distinctions matter.
They help you understand what kind of change you need. Rest, not achievement. Connection, not distraction. Meaning, not validation.
Another reason people stay lost is fear of regret. They worry that choosing a new direction means admitting the old one was wrong. But choices are not permanent judgments. They're responses to who you were at the time.
Regret usually comes not from changing direction, but from staying too long in a place that no longer feels true.
That's an important sentence. Many people don't regret trying something new, they regret ignoring themselves.
And ignoring yourself takes energy. That's why people who feel lost often feel tired, even if their life looks stable.
Tiredness is not always physical. Sometimes it's emotional exhaustion from pretending. Pretending you're fine, pretending you're certain, pretending you're fulfilled.
Dropping the pretense is scary, but freeing. It allows you to meet yourself honestly.
And honesty creates clarity, slowly, not through answers, but through alignment.
Alignment doesn't mean everything feels good. It means what you're doing makes sense internally.
And that sense of internal agreement reduces the feeling of being lost, even if the future is still unclear.
Because you trust yourself again. And trust is more important than certainty.
When people start to reconnect with themselves after feeling lost, they often expect relief to come immediately. They think clarity will remove discomfort. But that's rarely how it works.
What usually happens first is discomfort with awareness. Because once you see what no longer fits, you can't unsee it.
That's true. Awareness changes the relationship you have with your life, and that change creates tension.
You may notice that certain conversations feel empty, certain routines feel meaningless, certain goals no longer excite you. Nothing external changed, but internally, everything feels different.
And that difference can feel unsettling. People sometimes think, I was fine before. Why do I feel worse now? But what they're feeling is not worse. It's more honest.
Honesty often feels heavier than ignorance at first, but it's also lighter in the long run, because you stop fighting yourself.
One of the most important skills during this phase is tolerance. Tolerance for uncertainty. Tolerance for slowness. Tolerance for not having answers. Many people rush out of this phase too quickly because they're uncomfortable with not knowing.
But not knowing is not a mistake. It's a necessary part of recalibration. If you skip it, you risk building a new life on old assumptions.
And that's how people end up repeating the same patterns in different forms. New job, same emptiness. New routine, same exhaustion. New goal, same pressure.
True change requires integration. Integration means letting lessons settle instead of rushing toward the next solution.
Integration takes time. That's why people often underestimate how long internal transitions last. External changes can happen fast. Internal ones move at a different speed.
And that's okay. Your pace is not wrong just because it's slower than someone else's.
Comparison becomes especially harmful here. When you compare your internal process to someone else's visible progress, you lose trust in your own rhythm.
And trust is essential, because when you feel lost, you don't need a perfect plan, you need self-trust. Self-trust says, even if I don't know where I'm going yet, I believe I'll figure it out.
That belief changes everything. It reduces panic, it reduces pressure, it creates space.
Space allows curiosity to return. And curiosity is one of the clearest signs that you're moving forward.
Curiosity shows up as small questions. What would happen if I tried this? How do I feel when I do that? What do I need more of right now? These questions are gentle, not demanding.
They invite exploration instead of control. Control tries to eliminate uncertainty. Exploration learns from it.
Another important shift happens when people stop asking, what should I be doing with my life, and start asking, how do I want to feel while living it? That question brings clarity faster than most big philosophical ones.
Because feelings are immediate feedback. If something consistently drains you, that's information. If something quietly supports you, that's information too.
Feeling lost often means you ignored that feedback for too long. Not because you wanted to, but because you were busy surviving, pleasing, or achieving.
And survival mode doesn't ask about meaning, it asks about safety. Once safety is established, meaning becomes important. That transition is confusing, but natural.
This is why many people feel lost in their late 20s, 30s, or even later. Not because they failed, but because survival is no longer enough.
And that's not something to fix, that's something to honor.
Honoring this phase means allowing it to exist without labeling it as a problem. You're not broken. You're not behind. You're not wasting your life. You're listening more closely.
Listening changes direction, not suddenly, gradually.
And gradual change is stable change. It doesn't depend on motivation or excitement. It depends on alignment.
Alignment feels quieter than ambition, but stronger. It feels like internal agreement.
When you start making choices from that place, even small ones, the feeling of being lost begins to soften. Not disappear, soften.
And softening is progress, because you're no longer fighting where you are.
If you're listening now and you feel lost, here's something important to remember. You don't need to know the whole path. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to rush clarity.
You just need to stay honest, stay curious, and keep showing up gently.
Feeling lost is not the opposite of growth. It's often the beginning of it.
And beginnings are rarely loud. They're quiet, uncertain, and deeply personal.
But they lead somewhere real.